How to handle a micromanaging boss coming up in this episode. I get it. It sucks to be micromanaged. Regardless of what level of the organization you're at, this is a real possibility and in fact, a probability in some cases. And frankly, I think micromanagement's an epidemic. Even if you're a CEO at the quote unquote top of the food chain, you may have a micromanaging board. It says that you're undervalued. It's demoralizing and it leads you to really not caring. Because what's the point? Your boss is just going to do it or redo it anyways. Most importantly, it erodes respect influence, which, as we've discussed on previous episodes, respect influence is one of the most powerful sources of influence that one can have between a leader and quote unquote follower or a teammate. In this episode, I'm going to give you four ways to handle a micromanaging boss. So let's look at reasons why folks tend to micromanage. And none of them are actually totally separate. They're all intertwined. One of the reasons that people micromanage is stress. Stress in itself leads to wanting certainty, seeking a locus of control. And we lapse into what's comfortable and what we know. Contrary to popular belief, we don't rise to the level of the occasion. We actually drop to our lowest level of effective training and our own experience. Second reason is their own insecurity. Maybe they're threatened by you. Maybe they feel the need to be better than you because they are the boss. Maybe they recognize deep down that they aren't maybe as amazing at doing a particular thing as they think they should be. Therefore, that drives behaviors that they want to make sure that you know they are in charge. The third reason, and I see this very, very often, particularly in crisis leadership environments, where leaders tend to feel useless if they aren't involved. There's this perception that leaders should be the busiest in the room or in the group or on the team. And I've spoken about this in previous episodes. And so that perception drives the need, at least the desire, to really get involved and really mix shit up, whether it's valid or not. And a lot of times, bosses who aren't really busy get bored. You know, nobody likes to go to work every day and be bored out of their skull. Another reason is maybe they are being micromanaged. Think about it from a little bit bigger of a scope here. If your boss is being micromanaged by a VP or a CEO or something like that, then that is going to potentially drive that micromanagement behavior down to other levels. So if your boss is under pressure to know exact details around everything or a particular project or deliverable and timelines and all of those other things, then guess what? Your boss is naturally going to be passing that down to you because they have no other choice because they are being asked for it. Yet another reason is maybe that's the model in which they were raised. So that's what right looks like to them. They don't know anything else. They think that to get results, they have to be heavily involved. They have to be detail oriented. They have to be hands-on, all of which are red flags for you. If you describe your leadership style as hands-on, involved, detail oriented, or conversely, if your boss describes themselves like that. The last reason is maybe you freaking deserve it. Maybe you do deserve to be micromanaged or performance managed. There is a time and a place to be heavily involved as a boss with the folks you support. Maybe you aren't meeting your deliverables. Maybe you're having friction with your boss. Maybe you are not showing up for work on time. Maybe. So personal accountability and reflection is really, really important here because yeah, guess what? It could be you. It could be an issue and not an ish me. So keeping that in mind, those are all sorts of different reasons why micromanagement is a behavior that we see in the workplace an awful lot. And we really need to fix it. It is such an epidemic. So what are the three ways we can deal with this? Daryl, like, sure, it's nice to know why and all of that other stuff, but what are some potential ways out of this, of having a micromanaging boss? How do we actually handle it? There's really the three steps. Well, there's four, but one's a bonus, I suppose. So the first is to use what I call the CECW method to analyze the situation. So CECW. What is the first C? The first C is view it with curiosity, right? With interest. And it reminds me of that Ted Lasso episode where he's playing darts. And if you don't watch Ted Lasso on Apple TV, run, don't walk to watch it. It is such a great series for all sorts of reasons. But really, instead of getting angry first, view it with curiosity. That's the first C. And maybe run it through the lens of the previous why. What are those various reasons? The E in the CECW is empathy. So recognize the fish analogy. So fish don't know they're surrounded by water because they're in the water, but only through those who are looking at the fishbowl from the outside can we actually observe the behavior. So a lot of times those individuals just simply don't know any better. And as I said, they are viewing it maybe as being helpful. Maybe they're viewing themselves as detail oriented, involved, hands-on, all of those other things. And maybe they are being pressured by their boss as well. So curiosity, what is actually going on there? View it with interest. Empathy, practice and deploy some empathy. The third C is compassion. Treat it with compassion. And this is where I run into situations, even in a personal perspective or aspect too. You know, my dad is starting to age, or he is aging and has aged, frankly. And seeing a lot of those behaviors around scarcity and all sorts of other things are really bringing them to the forefront as he gets older. And pity's the wrong word, but certainly some compassion is in order, because a lot of times we have just such firm and strong beliefs, and a lot of them are bullshit. And we just think that that is the way the world is. And that is the belief, those are our values, and that drives our behaviors. And a lot of times you just simply can't change them, at least not easily. And so once you've been curious about it, once you have put yourself into their shoes, practice some compassion. And then the W is wisdom. Now take what you've learned and what you've observed and use this as an anchor for you, as when you are in a leadership position, you don't do that. So use the reverse role model, right? So curiosity, empathy, put yourself in their shoes, add some compassion, and then from that, gain some wisdom from the experience. So that is the first thing, is deploy that CECW method. The second way you can handle a micromanaging boss is build their trust. This can take a long time. It's not like on Friday you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to build their trust. It unfortunately doesn't work that way. Trust is built by not one grand act or project. It is like so many relationships, because that's what you're actually talking about. It's a professional relationship. Trust is built by thousands and thousands and thousands of seemingly innocuous or disconnected behaviors or interactions. And so be thinking in that mindset. If you are being micromanaged, the things you do need to be building trust. So be very deliberate. Take opportunities, take advantage of things that build trust, and recognize it can take a lot of time, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. A lot of times this is just like a chipping away of that distrust, of that insecurity, in that maybe your boss doesn't feel you're up to it or you're able to do it. So build that trust is the second way. The third way to handle a micromanaging boss is to have a discussion with them. Deploy what I call the B method, which is the behavior, the emotion, and the effect, the B method. An example could be, hey boss, when you review my emails and correct what goes out, it makes me feel undervalued and frankly useless. The effect is that I question everything I do, and from a practical point of view, it adds time and adds to your workload, which it actually does. Micromanagers are the busiest people in the world, going back to the whole reasoning that I talked about before. So the behavior, the effect, or sorry, the behavior, the emotion, and the effect. So the behavior is reviewing the emails, for example, and correcting everything that goes out. What is the emotion? Well, I feel undervalued and I feel useless. And what's the effect of that? Well, I question everything I do. And for you, it adds to your workload and adds time. Okay, so that's deploying the B method. So have that conversation with them. The fourth one, this is the bonus, and it's kind of a unfortunate one. Ultimately, it may come down to determining what you can control and can't control. So just realize that and reframe it. sometimes it just is what it is. You can't change behavior of somebody that has acted in a particular way for 25 years or whatever it might, their entire lives, right? So you have to determine, all right, so is this an issue or is it an issue to me? And ultimately it's your own issue, I suppose, but you have to just decide, you know what? It just is what it is. I'm just going to take a lot of deep breaths and just recognize it for what it is. And there's not much I can really do about it. And if it bothers you that much, then maybe it's time to look elsewhere, because I get it. I totally get it. Micromanagement is an epidemic and it's a killer of morale. It leads to compliance, not commitment, all sorts of different things. So those are the 4 ways to handle a micromanaging boss. I'd encourage you to comment and like and leave a review. So if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. I'm curious to hear what your experience is, and please like the video. And if you're listening on a podcast, leave a review. And by all means, please reach out to me through support@daryldblack.com. And I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks for your time.